I think the cool thing is if you kind of work backwards from Mrs. Brisby, the widow of Jonathan Brisby, you do get Mrs. Brisby, the young hot mouse who ran into this freak show who can read people letters and was like, I'd fuck that, and did.
Listen, if I met a sexy Neanderthal that knew about code, I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's hit it off. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And in an alternate universe, there is no way I'm not a fucking furry. Really? That's right. That's the one you're gonna crack?
It's so early. It's so early for this. And this week, we go on a mouse-sized adventure with The Secret of NIMH. Before we talk about the ups and downs of 80s storytelling, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod.
Most importantly, tell your friends. Tell your friends.
Please.
Next week is our Scorpio season. Not next week, sorry. In 2 weeks is our Scorpio season special. Today is the start of Scorpio season. That means it's almost our birthdays, and there would be no better gift from a bunch of strangers than y'all retweeting our little tweets and being like, hey, these guys are funny and occasionally insightful.
Our podcast is good. If you listen, you know this.
We don't want a
other
big
people
audience.
should have that.
We don't want a big audience. We want like an intimate group of chuckle fucks.
Yes, and with your help, we can have a slightly larger, intimate chuckle fuck group. Leyla,
Aaron,
you like mice stories?
Apparently, yeah.
I mean, like, were you ever like a mice kid though? Like, did you read Redwall?
No. So I missed. Okay. When I was a little kid, I had that like immigrant culture gap. So not a lot of things broke through between the years of 2001 and 2005. So I'm aware of Redwall, but I never read it. It like missed my scope. Did you?
So here's the thing. I don't think I've ever actually read Redwall. But I've read like other books in the Redwall universe. Like, I think that's the thing that bridges the gap between like, you know, kids books and like fantasy, like YA fantasy, like for me. Like, cause I remember definitely like, there's a story about a badger with a huge fucking sword. And I was like, I want to read that book. And now, unfortunately, I'm the person I am today, who talks a lot about military tactics. So, you know, be careful when you get on that fantasy pipeline. But, you know, I feel like little mouse stories are like pretty popular, right? Of course, there's this, right? There's Secret of NIMH, but there's also Tale of Despero. I feel like was popular when we were young, as well. Did you ever get into that?
I did not. I was into The Rescuers. That was my mouse story of choice.
Okay, yeah.
There's
another great.
Fievel, An American Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the key ones I can think of in terms of popular mouse stories of that era.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good spread, and I think it kind of gives us some background for what we're about to talk about, because, like, so I did watch The Secret of NIMH when I was, like, young, like, probably not older than first grade, and what I remember of it is that it was about, like, rats that got experimented on, but, like, watching this back, I was like, oh, there's no fucking way I made it through this movie. It's too scary.
It is very scary.
Like, for a young me who, like, listen, even to this day, I am not a person who handles, like, scary things especially well. But, like, there are some, like, animation choices. There are some, like, frightening moments in this film that I was like, oh, young Aaron could never have made it through, which is a shame because this is, like, a pretty good story. Even if I disagree with some of the choices they made narratively, I think it's a great little animated movie, and I wish that we had animation support like this in 2020.
Yeah. There's no way a film like this gets made in 2020. It is too scary and too weird. So when I was 6 or 7, maybe younger, even 5, it was this movie and The Lion King that were on repeat at our house. This is the movie 5-year-old Leyla saw and was like, this is going to be my personality for the next 20 years. I don't know what that says about me. I don't want to find out. I just, like, I've seen this movie almost as many times as I've seen The Lion King, and I've seen The Lion King very much. So, you want to talk about what it's about? Or rather, do you want me to talk about what it's about?
I want you to talk about what it's about, because listeners, you may have noticed that we didn't put up an episode last week. It's because we talked about the Locked trilogy and I was sick, and it was unlistenable. So maybe if you stick around, that'll come out as a bonus episode, but
yeah, so
my bad.
At this point, of the 3 Locked Tomb books that are out, we've recorded episodes on all of them and only have Gideon released. It is because we were baby podcasters when we recorded Harrow, and we were, the things we said were a little bit unbecoming of, like, us and the way we feel about media generally, so we took it off. And then, this one just, Aaron was sick, and I was barely there, so it is unlistenable. So what we've decided is when we read Electo, which we will read Electo, we're in too deep, we gotta do it, we're gonna just kind of do a Locked Tomb retrospective and cover everything then. So if you're like dying to hear us talk about those books for some reason, sorry about it. Maybe there will be a little bit of a bonus episode at some point.
One day.
So The Secret of NIMH is a movie by Disney trader Don Bluth and his camp. Meaning that you can be prepared for some magical hijinks, storytelling choices that don't necessarily make sense but have great vibes, and the archetypical kind of stupid Don Bluth boyfriend. He is a rat this time, so it's a little different than Dimitri and the Prince from Thumbelina, but still the same kind of like good boy vibes. So the movie is fundamentally about Mrs. Brisby and her beautiful children and her son Timmy, who gets sick. But he gets sick right before moving day because, you see, the farm that they live on, the tractors are about to start their harvest, and their house is in the way of the tractor, so they have to move it to the safe side of the tree so that they don't get plowed the fuck over by the tractor. Pretty wise. Unfortunately, Timmy can't go outside because he's got such a bad fever, so the only other solution before moving day is to move the fucking house. So after a close call with an early start on the tractor, thanks to our gal, Auntie Shrew, who stopped that with direct action, Mrs. Brisby finds out that there are these rats under the rose bush, and that she should go seek help from them. These rats are smart rats. They steal electricity. They're learned rats. And she goes to them and she says, "Hey, I'm Mrs. Brisby." And they go, "Like Jonathan Brisby?" And so she finds out that her mouse husband was experimented on along with these rats, and that's why he can read. Crazy. But so she goes to these rats, and the rats are like, "You know what? Jonathan was like a cool, sick dude. We really love Jonathan. Yes, we will help you move your house. Here's all the shit we're gonna do. One problem. You gotta go drug the cat on the farm." So Mrs. Brisby, housewife, has to fucking go on this killer mission to drug the cat. I believe his literal name is Lucifer.
His name is Dragon.
Dragon, sorry. Lucifer's the cat from Cinderella. They just look the same.
Same vibe.
Same vibe. So she has to go drug Dragon, and then they have to go move her house with this like very complicated crane engineering technology to the safe side of the tree root. Problem, our villain with the best cape work and animation you'll ever fucking see, Jenner, is like, "This is the time for my coup, actually. I'm gonna fuck up this whole woman's family to drop this giant cinder block on Nicodemus, our current leader, who I think is pussy shit." So he drops the giant brick on Nicodemus. Nicodemus dies. And our good Don Bluth boyfriend, Justin, decides to fight Jenner instead. He kills Jenner in a pretty gruesome way for a children's movie. You know how villains usually, they'll like drop off a cliff and the hero is like, "No, I didn't want you to die." No, they wanted that bitch to die. He gets stabbed between the shoulders.
There in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the last fight you have with the boss is you have to throw a knife at him. It's basically the same thing that happens in this movie.
Yeah, it's really Call of Duty Rattern warfare down in that fucking bog. And so Mrs. Brisby, as all of this is happening and her house is drowning and things are very tense, there's a lot of orchestral music happening, all the animals she's met along the way, the crows, the rats, they're all trying to help her, the shrew. What she has is this amulet from Nicodemus that had something to do with her husband, and basically only Mrs. Brisby, with the power of love and trusting in herself, can use this magical spiritual amulet to raise her house, move it out of the mud to the safe side of the tree. And everyone's like, whoa, Mrs. Brisby, you're amazing. And then, cut to the spring or the summer. Everyone's safe, everyone's happy, Timmy's well. The stupid gay crow has a girlfriend now. Everyone's chilling and happy and content. And that is The Secret of NIMH. It is a fantastic film. It's beautifully animated. It is very spooky for little children, but I love it, and I would watch it 100 more times. I say would as if I can't. I will be watching it 100 more times. Did that do it?
Yeah, no, I think you hit all the main points.
All right, let's talk about our girl, Mrs. Brisby. What did you think of her?
I like her a lot. I think she is extremely effective as a protagonist character. I think there is something to be said of like, oh no, it's a mom. We have to make this character a mom. But like, the thing is that this character is actually a mom, right? It's not the thing we see in a lot of TV shows, or especially like anime. I feel like it does this a lot, where it's like, okay, this woman is like going to be a protector, and in that way she is inhabiting the role of mother, which she is not yet, but she will be. And that's not the case here. Mrs. Brisby has 4 goddamn children, and they're all little terrors except for sweet Timmy, which is great because that's how kids are. I think she's brave, but she's also, empathetic, and she tries to mind her manners, but also she like gets fed up, especially like with Jeremy, right? She's like, come on, man, you're going to get us killed, dude. I think she's a very good protagonist. I like her a lot.
You're going to get us killed and you know nothing about women. Yeah, I think Mrs. Brisby is like fun because yes, she is a mom. Yes, she's like, the protector, and you're completely right. Like, she is a mom, so it's, there's no bone to pick there. You'd have to really fucking stretch. I think the cool thing is if you kind of work backwards from Mrs. Brisby, the widow of Jonathan Brisby, you do get Mrs. Brisby, the young hot mouse who ran into this freak show who can read people letters and was like, I'd fuck that, and did.
Listen, if I met a sexy Neanderthal that knew about code, I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's hit it off.
Exactly. So Mrs. Brisby saw that little freak Jonathan Brisby and was like, that's for me, thank you. And they had 4 beautiful children together, including my good friend Timmy. He's great. Jeremy's a crow. So he's one of the companion characters. This crow is incredibly well-intentioned, but the dumbest thing you'll ever see in your life. He really likes string. Watching this through my current lens, I do think Jeremy's a bisexual king. He's too into like interior decorating, to be completely heterosexual, or at least he's very comfortable in his masculinity.
And we got to give it up for that. Jeremy is a weird character, I feel, and maybe that's because, one, I've not seen very much media from the 80s at all, but 2, especially children's media. But like, he doesn't do anything narratively. He does not change the story in any. Oh well. He helps Mrs. Brisby fly to the Great Owl, I suppose. But like he doesn't, affect the narrative that significantly. He is, a side character through and through. But like, what I like about him is that he also allows us to see the color of the world. We get to see how Mrs. Shrew interacts with him. We get to see how the kids interact with him, and those are both very fun because it's just like, what is this fucking guy? What was this fucking guy? Let's beat the shit out of him. Every single one of them is just like beating the shit out of Jeremy, and it's great. He is a comic relief character in that way, but I think he's also very fun. I don't know why they had to end the film on his plot arc of wanting to get laid, becoming successful, but like, sure, whatever.
Gotta wrap it up for him. Putting it in that framing, I think he's necessary because without Jeremy, the movie is just scary and not very fun at all.
Yes, that's fair.
So the kids do need to laugh a little bit. Yeah, I think he's a delightful time. He's very fun. Now that I think about the Don Bluth canon, though, I do wonder if he has some beef with birds, because if you think about Thumbelina, Jacques is useless. Have you seen Thumbelina?
I have not.
Okay, so Jacques is a swallow that is in Thumbelina, and he roams around, he sings with his funny little hat, And there is a point at which Thumbelina is fucking stranded. And she's just like been kidnapped by the frogs. And she sees Jacques, who can fly. And she's like so close to her house, but she's tiny. So, it's not that close at all. Literally, you could see the house in the background. And Jacques comes down. And he's like, "Oh, Thumbelina, the prince is in love with you." And she's like, "Great, can you take me to him?" And he's like, "Oh, true love finds a way." And he like completely misinterprets the conversation and flies away. Useless. He could have just taken her home. The movie could have been 15 minutes long. So I do wonder if Don Bluth maybe has some beef with birds or just thinks they're like exquisitely stupid. Auntie Shrew, I think you had a fun note about her, which is like, you don't like her in the way you're supposed to not like her, which is she's nosy.
Yes. Right, she's definitely, right, she is an auntie, right, capital A, like, all up in your business, talking about how the kids are so rude, telling you about how to live your life, but, like, she also does, effectively save the children and warns Mrs. Brisby, right? She and Mrs. Brisby together take out a full fucking tractor, which is very cool. I think she completely serves the purpose that she's here for, and you gotta respect that.
I think, like, some of the most intense sequences in children's animation are these, like, animals versus giant machines. So it's Mrs. Brisby and Auntie Shrew versus the tractor, and then I would also like to put up to the committee the chickens and Chicken Run versus that pie machine.
We gotta watch Chicken Run one of these days, because I remember watching that a ton as a kid. I couldn't tell you anything about the plot right now, but we should revisit that.
That's another movie I have memorized, because when I came over to the States, it was like the one VHS I had. So I would just watch Chicken Run and the stop motion Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer like on repeat. So those Chicken Run and The Secret of NIMH are two movies that I just like have etched into my psyche. I could give you a
Chicken Run, Secret of NIMH, Rudolph. It is a wonder that you were anything but an animator, right?
Truly, I watched all the animators movies. These bitches out here watching The Little Mermaid. I'm like, oh, show me the movie about Mel Gibson being an American rooster upsetting all the British chickens.
I forgot Mel Gibson was the rooster. Jesus,
he's been recast for the sequel.
Oh hell yeah! There we go.
So we got the kids again. Timmy, my boy, the sweetest, and then the other three fucking clowns.
I mean, Martin is very funny because, like, actually the mouse in Redwall is named Martin, but like Martin in here, he's just like a kid. He's like, I'll fuck up anything. I'll kick that crow's ass. I'll kick the owl's ass. I'll kick dragon's ass. And he's like, about the size, like he could easily fit in your palm. He's just like a little mouse. But he's like, he's like a 12-year-old kid who wants to fight. He gets in the Auntie Shrew's face and he's very rude. I think Cynthia and Teresa are very much just like, girls that are like trying to, mess around with their brothers, but also, are a little bit more responsible than them. Timothy, my beef with Timothy is that he should be dead as fuck.
He should be quite dead is the thing.
That kid has an immune system and also bones of steel, because he did they all survived some shit. They should be all wiped the fuck out.
They are the children of like a weird mutant mouse.
That's true. They have their genes are all. This is what COVID is going to do to our children. Is the vaccine is going to alter their DNA and make them so strong that they can survive pneumonia and also having concrete blocks dropped on them. So that's good.
That is good. Yeah.
For new listeners, this is a joke. I must just straight up. I work in public health.
Yeah. Good. I feel like 120 episodes in, a good disclaimer to make.
Yeah, just for the record.
Then we got Mr. Ages. I love his weird little lab.
Yeah, I like his lab is very fun. That was the first thing that like I saw in this movie. I was like, oh, they really like put a lot of heart into like each background scene. Like it is exquisitely detailed in a way that like I don't know that they just don't make them like this no more.
No, that entry into the rose bush, because, okay, so it's the rose bush, and then underground is this, like, rat compound. There's, like, a meeting hall. It's got stories. There's a fucking laboratory. There's so much going on under that rose bush. And, like, truly each reveal is so fun. I love those rats. The rats of NIMH fucking rule. But I love Mr. Ages because he's cranky. Just a cranky old man.
He's a grumpy old man. Love to see it.
Love to see it. Him and his broken-ass leg, and he's like, you went to see the owl by yourself? Crazy bitch. no sense of self-preservation, and she's like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm the wife of Jonathan Brisby. I fucked a reading mouse. Like, it just is what it is. I had such a crush on Justin when I was a little kid.
Yeah, no shit.
It is like a wonder I am not a furry. It really is, because when you think about it, like Justin, self-insert me and Justin OTP when I was a little kid. Like, I was like, I love that rat. My sexual awakening was definitely Nala from The Lion King. You know exactly the shot I'm talking about when she's making those fucking bedroom eyes. Followed by Kovu from Lion King 2. Still hot for him. I always thought Robin Hood was pretty cute. Also, the Maid Marian. I thought she was pretty hot in that flick. So it is truly like a wonder that I ended up not a furry, albeit a monster fucker. You know what I mean? So there's like a tint of that still there, but
listen,
shocker.
they're like a step removed. Listen, they're Miss Brisby's attractive. Like, I get it.
She's got beautiful eyes.
Like I understand the appeal. Justin is, I think he is the same as, I mean, not that I've seen many Don Bluth films, but I feel like you kind of hit his archetype pretty squarely on the head. He's kind of like a himbo that wants to do what's best, and that's what we love.
Yeah, and he does do a murder, which is great.
Listen, if your dumb boyfriend can swing a sword, all the better.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty hot when I was a kid. Arguably, he's kind of hot now.
All right.
Listen, he'd make a great stepdad. That's all I'm saying. So Nicodemus is the old rat that is just like the head of all this. He's got these, like, I think about Nicodemus's hands all the time when I'm like, what I think is an appealing, like, visual style to depict that, like, all those knuckles and all that detail that goes into hands. I think
they look like tree roots.
They look like tree roots. It's so good. I love that old man. He's just wise and chill.
He's also explicitly magical, which I think is very fun.
Yeah, he's a wizard.
Yeah, there's just a couple of sequences of like just straight up magic in here. Like, there's a lot of, like, quote unquote like technology, right? They're using electricity to do all their cool shit in the rose bush. But Nicodemus is just a wizard, which rules.
Yeah, and like, listen, I think if I watched this movie for the first time now, I'd question that, but I didn't as a kid. I was like, yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, like, I questioned it, but also, like, that's not. It's not like to nitpick, right? It's just like, that's funny that he's just magical. It's fine that they don't like introduce it. I mean, like, they introduce it in that character exists and he's magical, and it gets paid off later with the amulet. It's like, okay, magic is real and powerful in this, and that's more than enough.
It's real and powerful, but it is limited, is the thing.
Sure.
So you don't expect that amulet to like replicate.
Sure.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah, no, it's good. I like Nicodemus. I think he's a cool character, and he serves his purpose, which is to, say, hey, I've brought you in after your very long journey. I'm gonna, comfort you, tell you it's all right, and then I'm gonna die. And that's just what the mentor character does.
So fucking murdered.
It's gonna be so bad. There's gonna be a shot. Jenner's like, I want to crush his bones, and then he does follow up on that and crushes Nicodemus's bones.
He does do that, is the thing. So Jenner, who's Jenner's like shitty little assistant? He has one.
He does. The guy who eventually deals the death blow to him. Let's see. I think his name might be Sullivan, but he is just kind of like a henchman rat. Jenner
gets introduced in the big meeting hall scene where he's like trying to pitch his weird evil manifesto. And there is what has to be, if I can picture it in my head, like a 4-second shot of him swirling his big fucking cape and it just slowly falling back into place. And that is the best cape work in all of animation. That entrance for a character, I knew everything I needed to know about him. He was evil and had a flair for the dramatic. And I was like, I'm in.
Have you ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I have. I love that movie.
Okay, I have not, but there's the one line that I know from it, which is Jessica Rabbit's famous, "I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way." Mm-hmm. That's 100% all you need to know about Jenner, is that he's just the most evil-looking motherfucker you've ever seen. He kicks ass.
He's so pointy. Though, you know what's funny? I think he's one of the only villains I can think of that's not, like, explicitly queer-coded.
Oh, no, yeah, he's a straight dude.
He's just like a evil straight man.
He's just a guy.
Finally.
And That's fine, you know? It's good for him. I'm glad that we're not, you know, back in 1982, Don Bluth was not like, we should probably not villainize gay people, right?
I don't know
so
if it was
shout-outs.
that deep. but
Yeah, I mean, of course, right? But still.
But yeah, it's nice to see some straight representation in the villain realm.
Finally, my people.
Yeah, because you guys are totally angels otherwise.
I think so.
And I got some honorable mentions here.
We'll talk about this in our talking points, but I thought that Dragon and the Great Owl were just really cool. Like I thought Dragon was very fun as just like a threat, even though Dragon doesn't talk at all. Just like the sheer size of Dragon was very endearing. And also with the Great Owl, there's just a shot of him like getting close to Mrs. Brisby to like inspect her, and like his eyes are like headlights, so it like casts a light around her. And I thought that kicked ass that his eyes actually glowed. That was so cool.
Oh my god, that owl! I'll try to find the owl sequence on YouTube and link it in our show notes, because it's just like, there's so much weight to the owl, the way he moves, and he's so ancient. He's in that fucking tree, and you don't know how long for, because every time he moves, it's like the earth moves with him, and he's moving these like stretchy cobwebs, and it's just so... Man, maybe that's why I always like appreciate scale in things like Elden Ring. I love the sense of scale in Elden Ring, how small you feel in this land of giants. Maybe that's where it came from, because I just remember being a little kid and just being like, wow, like he is so big and so scary. I love that fucking owl. He's so good.
Yeah. I do want to talk about the ending for one of our talking points, because like I thought it was a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina in the way that like it was resolved, because like basically right at the very end, her children are sinking into the mud and like their house is being buried, and the necklace that she was given just gives her the power to save them, and like, you know, Deus Ex Machina is a little bit unfair, because like it was kind of set up earlier, like the necklace was like physically given to her, and I looked up why they made this choice, and Don Bluth basically said that like the magical amulet is a representation of her character's internal power. The stoner amulet is just a method of letting the audience know that Mrs. Brisby has found a courage of the heart. Magic, maybe. Spiritual, yes. Right? So, like, you know, it is magical. It is meant to, you know, be like, okay, she's completed her arc, and because she's completed her arc and found her courage, she's able to complete this. But, like, you know, if you're going to make it diegetic, it is kind of a weird choice to be like, and then she gets telekinesis. But like, I think that's a little bit of a silly criticism to make of a kid's film. But I did find it a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about this?
It's an interesting change to make from the source material, but I think Don Bluth in that same excerpt is right in saying like, if you're omitting stuff from the book, you want a satisfying ending in which Mrs. Brisby grows. That's, you know, you can't really have kids media where that doesn't happen. Just not how the genre works.
Sure.
But it is weird, but it's weird in a way I want to celebrate, because like,
yeah,
I think we should make weirder kids shit. Like,
sure.
Owl House is weird, right? And I'm like obsessed with it. I think it's great programming. Courage the Cowardly Dog was weird. Adventure Time arguably was like weird, right? Like we don't have enough of that because everything's so sanitized, and like 2 corporations own all the media anybody consumes ever. More weird 80s shit with unexplained magic. I feel like that was the vibe back then, you know?
Yeah.
And it should be the vibe more often.
Yeah, you know, I think that's more of a me problem, right? Is the honest fact, because like I am somebody who's trying to get commercially published, and like one thing that I've been taught, you know, since I started trying to figure out how to write for you know, a market, is that, you know, you have to adhere to certain storytelling rules, and the 3-act structure is one of those rules that you just kind of have to adhere to if you want to get published in the United States. Like you have a character who, you know, has a problem. The problem is complicated, the problem is resolved, and they change from the beginning of that problem to the end of that problem. And also you have to, set up a series of guns, right? That's Chekhov's gun. But it's not the fact that is an ironclad rule in a lot of media. Like, I understand why. I think it is more satisfying if you set up a thing and it doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Because it does kind of take away some of the impact of this thing if it's not, if it's not set up before. But like at the same time, I think you're right, especially in kids media, especially when it's doing something as cool and unique as Secrets of NIMH, which is like, so basically, the National Institutes for Mental Health made rats fucking geniuses. Like, I feel like you probably should be able to get away with more weird stuff. And like, because this is the 80s, or rather, because we live in the 2020s, like as you say, everybody, everything is owned by like 8 companies. I do wish that we were seeing more weird stuff that maybe even if it doesn't narratively work, like they are trying for something, they're taking big swings. I don't know that this was maybe as big of a swing, the fucking, what's that movie about a kid who can go into books and like the part was like live action, but when he went inside the books, it was like cartoons. Did you ever, I'm going to look that up because that's definitely a thing. Like, it's like storyteller or page teller or page master, maybe. I'm going to look that up. Maybe.
No, Ink Masters is a tattoo thing.
But like that's the thing. Like, maybe this wasn't as inventive in the 80s, but like seeing it now, it's like, oh, that's really cool. So that is definitely a me thing. I just want to say.
Yeah, I would like to argue that the amulet was as set up as it needs to be, only because there is like this, when she first gets it, the shot that introduces the amulet is this like a beautiful painted glowing close-up on it with like her reflection in it, which is pretty rad. And then I'm looking at, of course, I have a poster in my office of The Secret of NIMH. I'm looking at my poster in my office, and it is pretty front and center, that amulet. Her and like Jonathan are looking at it on sitting on like a tree branch over the title. So, I think it's enough. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking much out of a 90-minute flick, and it's so beautiful and it's so good and like spooky and weird and Justin's hot, so it's a great movie.
Great. To get into why I liked this a lot also is because, like, I feel like I've been exposed to a lot of media where you are a little mouse in the last couple of years, and I think there's, or not even a little mouse, just like a little guy, and I think there's something appealing about being very small and seeing the world from the perspective of something that's very small and being like, oh, the world's like, if I was small, man, that would be terrible because things are so big and terrifying. How did you hear anything about the Obsidian game Grounded?
No.
Okay. It's basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but like a survival RPG. And like, I normally don't like those at all, but I did play the demo on Game Pass, and I thought it was really neat because like you're like herding ladybugs, and like you have to fight, like spiders are one of the big enemies. And what's very funny is that they have accessibility settings that's like, or not accessibility, but like approachability. Like, if you have arachnophobia, you can turn down how spider-like the spiders look. Whereas, like, at number 10, they're very realistic spiders, and at number 1, they're basically like a smiley face. A blob of that's a smiley face, and it's like, oh, that's fun. I like that.
That is fun. Yeah. I would argue Elden Ring is kind of a little guy game. Not to the extent
I suppose so.
Not to the extent we're talking about now, but like everything is so large in comparison.
Sure.
Also a big fan of A Bug's Life. I still think about how big those raindrops were in A Bug's Life, and that bird scene was really cool. There's a lot of like appeal to seeing a world from like that new perspective, because on the other hand, if you're like, okay, what if I embiggen, then you become a threat to the world, right? Because you could accidentally crush some shit. But if you're just a little guy, things are just spookier for you.
Yes, so like, I hate to make a reference to this film, but like, there was one line in it that I thought was very effective. in Jurassic World from 2015, they're talking about the Cyber T-Rex, whatever the new monster they made, and they're yelling at the doctor, and they're like, you created a monster, and he's like, to a canary, a cat is a monster. And like, it's a little bit of a corny line, but like, I also like it a lot because it does emphasize the truth about the world that like everything is relative. And no type of media is that more true in like mouse stories, right? That's why I like Dragon and the Great Owl so much, because like Dragon is functionally a dragon, right? And like similarly, the owl is functionally a dragon compared to these mice, right? Because they are so much bigger than them. Like, it is impossible. Like, when you do mouse media, you often get mice fighting with weapons that are like a needle, right? I think that's Tale of Despero's weapon is like literally just a needle, because like that's what you can do against a cat or an owl, right? Otherwise, you're fucked. And like, it is so fun for me to think that like my little sweet baby girl, aka Scout, my little cat, my little one-eyed cat that I love so much, like I hold her and I bounce her, and she gets on my chest and whines until I let her sleep on my chest every night. And also, that adorable little face was the last thing some poor rodent saw in my first apartment with her, because like she is functionally a killing machine, and I love that for her.
Yeah. Wow. No love for Vincent.
Vincent, I love him too. He's my sweet baby boy. He is not motivated to hunt. he knows where his food comes from, and it's me and his mom.
Yeah, Toulouse is the same way. I haven't seen him murgle anything in a long time. I will say, I think him and my dog did get a spider recently. Thank fuck. Finally, I killed like 40 of them a fucking day in the summer. I do think they ground it into my carpet because
Gross.
I wasn't wearing my glasses. I didn't want to look, you know what I mean? I didn't want to know what it was. I was like, it doesn't matter. Yep. Just vacuum it up. Yep. But my cat Toulouse, also cuddly little purr machine, just so drooly. So the fact that his big fat round face was the last thing that spider saw, tragic for him. But yeah.
There's also there's a PlayStation VR game called Moss where you get to play as a little mouse, and like that's really fun to actually physically like be in the headspace of a little mouse. I'll
also shout out there's a new my friend's company just published The Spirit in the Mouse. So there's another mouse game you guys can go play.
My wife told me about that. That looks fun. And lastly, as a tabletop, enthusiast, Mouse Ritter, Mausritter, is like probably the quintessential like tabletop game where you are a little mouse. It's an OSR style, in which case I think there's definitely issues with how OSR games are played as far as their narratives are concerned. But like I was reading through Mouse Ritter again while watching this film, and I was like, actually, this fantasy is very, very appealing going back. So like Mouse Ritter is free. We'll drop a link in the show notes. But like if you have any interest in tabletop games, check out Mouse Ritter because it's real cool.
Hell yeah. I like that the end of this just turned into like little guy recommendations. Like, hey, if you want to just scale your life down.
It's fun to be a little guy.
It is quite fun to be a little guy.
Leyla, if you were making I'm a Small Little Guy media property, do you have any thoughts about what that might look like?
Do you?
I mean, I think the actual answer is just like some sort of Mouse Ritter spinoff where like you and a bunch of other little mice have to go and deal with an evil lord that is basically just like a cat in somebody's apartment that's just like sending other mice out to do its bidding. I think that'd be very funny.
That would be very funny. I think I'd like to do a Secret of NIMH Souls-like. I think
also very good.
I think Mrs. Brisby should get a gun.
The Secret of NIMH, very large book. The Secret of NIMH and Mrs. Brisby had an AK, very small book. Yeah,
she just march under that rose bush. Not even have to convince anybody. Even Jenner would be like, fine.
All right, Jesus. Yeah, no, I think that's all very fun. I think a Souls-like game where you as a little mouse fight a tractor would be cool as hell.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's one of those things where I think about the amulet where, like, you wouldn't even have to introduce a mechanic for the magic in the game. You could just do the JRPG thing where you kind of put the fight on rails and make it super cinematic and yet somehow satisfying, like the final fight in Breath of the Wild that I think about all the time. I'm so excited for Tears of the Kingdom!
Next year.
Speaking of little guys, give me my little guy back!
We'll see him soon. Leyla, when we are not pining over our lack of little guys, where can we be found on the internet?
Find me at LEYLSES on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram. Just kind of busy, just trying to make it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Aaron, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I tweet about tabletop RPGs, health policy, and writing. I have a YouTube channel that's at A.Voigt, where I do tabletop reviews and essays.
They're very good and everyone likes them.
I think so, certainly. I also do another podcast with my friends Michael and Josh. That's at The Bible Boys. We are finishing up our spooky season. Ideally tomorrow we will record an episode on the classic found footage film Blair Witch Project, which I watched this morning and I liked a lot.
Did you find it scary?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
As we've established, I'm easily scared.
So am I, though. That's the thing. Interesting.
Yeah, but we could talk about it off air. But also, you should tune in to that podcast to hear my thoughts on Blair Witch Project. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Hear me. The Thorn Valley Plan is the aspiration of idiots and dreamers. We were just talking about you.
Oh, that's refreshing, Aaron. Usually you're screaming about us.
There we go. We'll see you all next week.